Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back as we start our Monster March with another cool movie. But I am not.
That's a word for it.
Night evening. So why don't you say hello to Katie? Katie, why don't you tell us what's in store for us today?
Hey folks, it's Katie Cadaver. Welcome to our first Monster March episode of Inside Movies Galore. And tonight we're going to be talking about Gregory Lamberson's 2015 film Killer Rack, a killer comedy with big eyes, which also stars Lloyd Kaufman and Debbie Rochon, surprisingly. So, spoiler warning, as usual, we're going to be discussing all of the things about the movie. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want this really epic film spoiled for you, stop listening now. So Killer Rack, from the director of Slime City, comes a screwball horror comedy about a set of monstrous memories. In a world that prizes breast size over accomplishments, Betty Downer just can't get a break. Scorned by her coworkers, ridiculed by her boyfriend, and overlooked by her boss, Betty impulsively books breast enhancement surgery with the elder gods worshipping Dr. Kate Thulu. And then all hell breaks loose. So, all right, guys, you ready for this? As the honorary member of the group, the only member of the group with tits, I guess that's why I'm hosting tonight, because I have the official Killer Rack. So, well, why don't we hear what everybody thought of the film? I'm guessing it was most of your first time watching it. How about you, Dane? We haven't heard anything from you yet this evening.
Yeah, my first time seeing it. And I've not seen any of the Slime City films, so this is my first exposure to Greg Lamberson's work. But
I thought you were with us on the Slime City episode.
No, I was not.
Oh.
It was for this film. Like, interestingly enough, it does feel a lot like a trauma movie, but it was distributed by Camp Motion Pictures, and obviously, it does have some trauma alumni in it. As far as what I thought of it, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It was just kind of in the middle. And I mean, I tend to, with a title like Killer Rack, it's like, well, I tend to at least be curious about, any title that is deliberately trying to grab your attention like that. So, I mean, I give them points for that, but it's just, I don't know, it's very hit or miss for me, but I didn't despise it, but wasn't ecstatic about it.
Cool, that's fair. How about you, Brandon?
This is not my first time seeing it. This is my first, and I hadn't seen, I guess you could say I hadn't seen the whole bit because I didn't see all the stuff with the credits until this time around. But after the Slime City one and then the interview with the director so long ago, I gained an interest in the works, and then I was provided with the means to access some of those, and then lost the means in between. So that particular one did amuse me enough that I had to check it out. I like the absurd. I've always liked the absurd when it came to movies, be it House Shark or about killer turkeys or killer toilets. So, a movie about killer boobs, that's right up my alley right there. And throw in Lloyd Kaufman, and hey, you got something great.
Perfect. Dustin, what was your first impressions on this one?
What the hell did we just watch? It was I think this is the weirdest movie that I've seen for this show, at least. Like, I got the feeling right away. It's sort of funny that Dane said it kind of felt like a trauma film, because I was pretty sure it was a trauma film. I was watching it and I was like, so is this a trauma movie? And then Lloyd Kaufman's scene is 20 seconds after I had that thought, and it's like, oh, okay. But it's one of those really bizarre independent movies where you get the feeling that they had a handful of jokes, but not necessarily a whole lot else. It just kind of moves from gag to gag, or at least that was the impression I got. I mean, I thought it was a lot better than the concept really had any right to be. It was really weird and definitely for a specific kind of audience.
Well, I guess that was, not to get too far off, but it's like, I guess that's kind of what I don't want to say had issue with, but it was just like, because I love trauma movies and I love absurd things. Like I'm a fan of the Sharknado series and just things of that nature. I kind of felt in some ways like it just was very hit or miss, and it wasn't like consistently high energy or consistently so absurd that it's like you can't look away. I mean, like Poultrygeist is a good example of how the absurdity just ramps up and up and the energy level's constantly high. This one just felt kind of sporadic in terms of like the moments that really grab you.
Grab.
Did you have anything else on that, Dustin, or can I move on?
I think that's more or less. I mean, I don't know if I can say like I liked it per se. Like it had stuff in it that was good. It was just kind of like Dan said, like really hit or miss. Like a lot of the one-liners were pretty fun. But it's gonna be a hard movie to describe to people later, let alone recommend. So, I mean, it definitely wasn't bad, but I don't know what this was.
Well, we will dig in. Jake, how about you? Was this a first-time watch?
Oh, this was definitely a first-time watch. This was definitely a little bit outside of my usual viewing zone.
Think so, huh?
I have to admit, and I'm probably going to take some heat for this. I don't know. But I think this may be the first film I've seen with Lloyd Kaufman. It may be. I'm not sure. And I did like him. I thought he was fun in the movie. Reminded me a little bit of Mel Brooks, which kind of was a actor. I agree with Dustin's characterization of better than it had any right to be. Definitely what I knew of this going in, which was very little, oh my God, I had vaguely connected this to Slime City, but not fully made the connection. And that still is one of my misses for this show. It is one of my least favorite ones I've watched for this show. So I found this one to be consistently much funnier than Slime City. I enjoyed the absurdity of this one a lot more than Slime City. I think it was about as subtle as a sledgehammer in terms of making its point.
Well, that's the idea.
But I did like some of the one-liners. I kind of appreciated the groan of some of the others. I really liked the lead. I thought she did a really good job. So it definitely had a lot going for it, but I think Dustin, you were the one who said, I agree. It's a hard one to figure out who to recommend it to or even talk about it with afterwards. Yeah.
Well, somebody who could talk to about it would probably be David, because I think this was your idea, wasn't it, Dave?
It was.
So you're responsible.
I am responsible for this monstrosity. Yes. But
to be fair, we did vote it in.
To be fair, this is my second time watching, but I was actually one of the ones who actually put money into this campaign, which wasn't a lot, not as much as most people were at that point in time. I think I put $25 in to get my name in the back and whatever. But that's besides the point. Yes, some of the one-liners you kind of have to roll your eyes at because they sound like something that would have been said like in the 70s, or something that might have been said on the Man Show. But
That's
Come on.
ancestral memory there.
This was a movie made for men to laugh at the obsidious, construction of these mammary glands that just start going around eating people. But I have seen something similar to this idea in an anthology that I've seen before called Trapped Ashes, which there was a young girl who ended up going and getting a transplant, and she ended up getting a pair of breasts that had teeth. So I could see it happen. I just didn't expect the absurdity of the balloons effect.
Well, that actually brings up something about.
Was the only thing you found absurd?
Well, there is something from folklore, I think from all over the world, if I'm not mistaken, but it's something called vagina dentata, which obviously was the basis of the movie Teeth. Just the idea that a woman's vagina would have teeth, and it's a folkloric idea of the quote unquote dangerous woman, who, is able to defend herself from men in the most personal way possible. And it's interesting to see the breast get the same kind of treatment, even though it doesn't have quite the folkloric mythology to it.
So, side note, the vagina dentata thing is also a running gag in I think it was an FX series, Scream Queens. Like, there's a character who they just kind of like offhandedly, it's, you can't get a boyfriend because you have teeth in your vagina. And like, after like the 10th time they mention it, she just screams at them, I do not have teeth in my vagina! Like, in hysterics. And so that's my familiarity with the term.
Going in.
Yeah.
Well, I do
I was
not
thinking
have
of that movie
teeth
too.
in my vagina, or my breasts. But this is the first time I've seen this movie.
I don't really want to think about it.
It was kind of interesting that Dave, you said that this was a movie made for men, because as a woman watching this movie, I thought, boy, this really speaks to an actual problem. Like, number one, I would have to say I would love to be able to kill people with my tits. It's kind of a dream that I have. But the whole like exaggerated idea that they put forth here, how she's, nobody pays any attention to her until she gets these giant tits. It's kind of realistic, let me just say. So I could relate, is what I'm trying to say. I could relate to the movie. I thought it was a fun watch. It was ridiculous and silly, but I don't mind that. I kind of dig movies that don't take themselves seriously at all.
Maybe
it's kind of like the Slashing, if anybody's seen that Trauma movie.
Nope.
Well, I guess that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there was another pair of killer boobs I remember in the movie Killer Bong. But it wasn't really the boobs as much as the brassieres that they wore. Like they were little drills or shark heads, and they were used to kill people. And
your like Ginger Dead Men and Killer Bongs.
Hey, there's a German film that Trauma picked up called Killer Condoms.
Yeah,
which was pretty awesome too. So
well, then
Germany has weirdos too.
Let's not forget the all-time kings of that sort of thing would be the fembots in Austin Powers.
Well, yeah.
Even earlier, Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs.
Yeah,
Well,
I do kind of want to make a kind of a supporting comment for Katie. Like I kind of picked up on that too, and with it was made for men to laugh about boob jokes, and it was like I didn't really laugh at hardly any of the boob jokes. I mean,
it was like female revenge story.
Yeah,
that's the way I saw it.
It was a movie made for men, told from the woman's perspective.
I wouldn't even necessarily say that. I mean, I think it just is. I don't know. It's hard to even talk about it. It is what it is. But
It feels like some exaggerated commentary. I mean, it feels a little bit like exploitation to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which
You know.
actually, Katie and I were talking a bit beforehand. Just a couple of things, like something that I thought was, well, like she said, like that the only people they only pay attention to her once she gets her boob job. But the thing I thought was kind of interesting was that they started to go on this route and then they quickly got away from it, was when she makes more of an effort to like change up her rather drab wardrobe and put on some makeup and that kind of stuff. Then she kind of starts to get noticed, but then it immediately goes far afield. But what which is interesting, because I've seen a lot of I brought it up because I've seen a lot of makeover shows on like HGTV and TLC and that kind of stuff. And even without having to do like an extreme makeover where they get like a ton of plastic surgery, even just getting a change of wardrobe or a change of hairstyle or a change of whatever, can do a whole lot, for one's look and one's confidence and one's, that's men and women too, because shows I'm thinking about, they do it for both. But, it's just, I think it's interesting that is, they start off with that route. And obviously they deviate because I guess that the boss is just that superficial and that much of a creep, as we later find out. But it's just interesting because any fashionista, anybody who's fashion conscious, I think would probably say start with that before you do anything more drastic. And you also notice that after she gets her boob job, that she doesn't really do anything else to change her appearance, really. Like, again, there's no going the extra mile, there's no change in hairstyle, makeup, wardrobe, nothing like that. It's just, that's purely what it is. And of course that's where the humor comes in, is that that's all it takes to magically turn her life around, at least seemingly.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's really, maybe it was not intentional, I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like without adding those extra things, because that sort of muddies the waters in terms of like why is she being prejudiced against, like why aren't they paying attention to her? Well, is it because she's not wearing makeup? No, they really do want to showcase it's just the size of her chest, like all the ridiculous things pointing to that, like her door of her apartment says like Flatty on it and stuff. And it's like, I mean, nobody really, that's so exaggerated. Like, I don't know any adult women who get made fun of that much for the size of their tits, but it's, driving home that point and that point alone. I think had it been other things, and I don't know, maybe it was like a wardrobe choice. I noticed a few things as someone that produces live entertainment, particularly burlesque shows. There's things that I watch for, like tags sticking out of clothing, or like certain things that are extra that you don't really need to have. And like, I noticed there was some of that lacking in terms of like costume design and stuff for this film. Like, there probably wasn't any, is my point. So whether she was supposed to look drab on purpose or not, I don't know. But I think the fact that they,
her own clothes.
Yeah, probably. This movie was filmed on the weekends, so who knows? But the fact that they didn't do any of that, like makeover her entire body or whatever, I think that would have taken away from the point they were trying to drive home, that it really was just the tits.
Yeah, and I can definitely see what that is indeed, what they were trying to go for with the fact that it is humorous. It's just, I do think it's, that part of it is interesting, just because, again, like on any any kind of fashion makeover kind of show, not even a plastic surgery thing, that's usually where they start, and that can more or less do the job. But again, I get that it's not trying to be so nuanced.
I'm guessing they didn't even have an MUA on this set.
Yeah.
That's my
That's
guess.
and that's something else that it kind of didn't really work for me because I love trauma movies and I love stuff like Romeo and Juliet and Poltergeist. Those movies tend to, well, part of it's because Lloyd Kaufman has, decades of experience in that area, but it's like this movie, it felt rather inconsistent in terms of its the technical aspects. Some of those things could look really good, surprisingly good for what I assume the budget was, which is not much. And then other things could look kind of really obviously poor and not in like a charming way.
I think definitely.
I think they were fairly charming. Like even like the really obvious like fake mouth boobs. Like
yeah, it's that.
they were
I'm
so
not
cute
even
and
talking about.
creepy.
I'm not even talking about that. Like, here's a good example. So like when we first get a good look at the killer rack itself, not the monster version, but just normal looking, the blending of the prosthesis with the rest of her skin looks pretty convincing. I was impressed. And then on the other hand, then you had when she first comes back into work after having had her procedure, there's the shot where she like leans down, you can see this really painfully obvious padding, and it's like, come on, and it just, I don't know, it's just, I could go on and on, but there's like little things along those lines. It's like this one effect that is surprisingly quite convincing, and the other effects that are just like they're not even trying.
Well, some notes on that. So I wasn't looking terribly hard, so I completely missed that. And I thought it was kind of funny, like when they finally reveal like the killer rack itself, like like you said, the non-monster version. Like she finally takes her top off, and I just kind of like look up, look down. Was my actual reaction. So.
Well, again, it's.
I would make an argument against effects on that.
Well, what's interesting about that is that I'm talking specifically about the blending of a prosthesis with one's skin tone. In terms of, they very obviously look fake, but again, I think that's kind of the point, is that, if you've ever seen any, obviously not high quality, boob jobs, and they can look really like overly stiff.
Terrible.
And yeah, exactly. And overly spherical, overly just like, too, I don't know, just they look bad. And so
like two softballs under some skin.
Well, more like two like orbs when, well, yeah, because female breasts are supposed to be teardrop shaped.
Describe it.
It's true. It is true, but it's like, so in other words, in that sense, you took someone who was maybe like a small B or something and beefed her up to like a double or triple D. It's like, well, obviously there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room there. So of course, what you get is not going to look natural. And so again, in that sense, they accurately replicated that in the form of a prosthesis. But
yeah, I agree. That looked really good.
Exactly.
It stood out to me, and I was surprised
for that kind of job. I mean,
yeah.
It's not like she went up just like one size, and it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty smooth.
We totally missed being able to do a wiggle room joke here.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean, right? It's like the bigger you go up with, the less you have to work with, and obviously it's going to stand out more. That's just basic science.
Hey, Brandon's been trying to make a point for a while. What's up, Brandon?
Well, basically, I was going to say is when we were talking about, I mean, Lloyd Kaufman, of course, having the experience level he did, but this director is not exactly new to the field either. I mean, with Slime City, this was one of the pioneers in this area. I believe it was done almost at the same time as, Katie, one of your favorite movies, Street Trash, at the time. And, of course, the effects were quite well done for the budget. I felt like I did feel like the effects were not as well paid attention to in this movie as it was in one of those movies, or even the Return to Slime City.
Which I believe could have been something with how much they had to go on budget-wise. So,
but I mean, that was the point, because Slime City had even less of a budget, and it was amazing the things that they did in order to accomplish those effects. I don't know. It's just maybe they didn't work as hard to do the effects as in the past. I mean, they were still decent effects, and they were still pretty decent for what they had. But I know that he was capable, or at least he had a team capable of doing better than what was.
Yeah,
I thought Slime City was pretty bad, so I'm kind of surprised it's the same guy.
Well, I'd say it was inconsistent, because if it was like consistently good or consistently bad, that'd be one thing. But it was a disconnect, and that's not even just on the effects level, but it was also on the just basic filmmaking level, where the ADR was really noticeable, and it was just like, are you even trying here or what? I mean, and I know sounds tough to do. I've had my fair share of tough situations with sound, but it just again, inconsistent there. The fourth wall breaking jokes could be funny, but more often than not, I felt like they were trying too hard. Like a good example is like when Lloyd when it hits is something like Lloyd going, "Jumping Jesus on a pogo stick," and then there he is, and he goes and follows him.
Jumping on a pogo stick.
That made
I
me
enjoyed
laugh.
that. That was
I
good.
did too.
Well, I love that because
best when it embraced its craziness.
Well, that, and if you know Lloyd, he has said that several different times in several different things, and it was nice to see that actually being made literal. He and Debbie Rochon, again, two veterans of this sort of thing, they really got the spirit of it. And then other people, I feel like they were trying to, but the dialogue didn't always help them, if that makes sense.
I followed Debbie Rochon on Twitter, but I did not realize who she was until this moment. I just thought she was cool.
Actually,
I felt like this film was... Oh, go ahead, Jacob. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, we kind of just had this really long talk on the effects and everything, but we haven't even talked about the characters or...
That's okay. We're jumping around
What
tonight.
characters?
I'm not going to be real picky. I mean, you guys can talk about whatever you want, and I'm sure we'll hit all the topics.
And
on the last of them...
Oh, go ahead.
Before we move on to characters, just one last note on the plot. I feel like the main point is that this movie was trying to be a trauma movie, but fell short of being a trauma movie. And that was the whole of it, I think, at the end of the day. If you really think about it, I almost feel like it was trying too hard to be a trauma movie, at least as far as the zaniness or craziness.
I think this movie could have very well been a decent killer boob movie. Let's just put it that way.
The only killer boob movie.
If
winner by default.
I don't think that they got as much money as they needed for the film.
That was what I was going to say, because I wondered if the budget was higher for this, would it have been better, or was it just due to a lack of someone's ability?
I think it was honestly in the writing, because I mean, I think that, again, the effects that are good are definitely good enough to carry a movie like this, but I really think it came down in the script, just because it wasn't like, the writing was just very inconsistent in its humor and in its just grasp of what it was dealing with.
Some of those jokes were amazing, though. I mean, the thing with the turtle, oh my god. That made me so happy.
On the writing, I think it is worth noting that the writer is the guy who played Tim, and I think he was listed as, this is like his second
guy.
Something.
He also came up with the lyrics for that that song. actually.
Oh,
which is the best
God.
thing about the movie.
Yeah, the songs were surprisingly
Sunday.
good, and I really liked Tim a lot when he first gets introduced with his like hand puppets. I was like, this guy is my hero because I used to do that at some previous jobs I had.
So
That
basically,
song is great. The songs were great.
Yeah, he was cool.
I feel like one of the reasons why there may have been a feeling of inconsistency, which I didn't really hold against the film terribly, but I felt like Tim and it was written and Betty was written rather earnestly, like rather like they're actually people you're supposed to like and root for, and everyone else is written as these crazy caricatures or as really over the top. The detectives were basically a joke on the entire detective genre. You know,
McGarnagle.
And those cat callers, those guys kind of remind me of like Silent Bob.
yeah,
I like the cat callers and I like the cops. I thought they were actually quite funny, and they were pretty good self-aware portraits of like the well, I actually, those are two strong points of the thing. I really like the old cop who is probably going to have a stroke or some other kind of awful health problems, but he's
Right
like just
before his retirement.
yeah, just like one step away from it, and then his
retirement.
and his partner's like constantly asserting the fact that he's taken and he's not gonna cheat on his wife, is about to have a baby, all that stuff. And then I thought the cat collars were actually kind of a funny self-aware portrait of like why a lot of guys do that. It's it's for this kind of sadistic sexual harassment kind of thrill, and then all of a sudden when she under the possession of the killer rack, when she gives in, then they're like, oh well, I don't know what to do now. It's like,
Like,
yeah, that's
now
didn't
what?
think that would work. Yeah, I don't know, they kind of had a weird kind of endearment.
I'll back you up with the tunes, man. Going into you gonna clear out a bunker? Like,
And I also like the pickup guy in the bar. He was funny.
Yeah.
Actually, I agree with you. Those cat collars are quite entertaining individuals, especially if you think about it and you listen to the speech. There's a lot more to it than just your typical cat collars. I mean, shoot, even at the beginning where he's saying, hey man, dial it back.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's trying to
teaching.
Well, he's like trying to teach him the art of catcalling.
Yes.
It's just like posting.
I'm coming at this film knowing some of the characters that actually did like Michael Thurber, who played the boss. I actually know him. Know of him through some films that were directed under Richard Griffin. So seeing him in this role of a boss was kind of interesting.
Oh God.
Well, good. I think we kind of covered most of our characters. I mean, they're not very deep. They're not very complex.
There aren't a whole lot of them either.
There aren't a whole lot of them, right?
There was the crazy doctor. There was the doctor who like implanted the killer rack, and then there was that one girl who was like her big rival at work, who kept like showing her up. But other than that, there really wasn't anybody else in the movie beyond just like random victims.
Well, Lloyd was the best character. Let's just be real.
Well, I mean, it's Lloyd. I mean, it's sort of like Beetlejuice when Beetlejuice is on screen. Like, the movie literally cannot be about anything else in those moments.
The Lloyd did actually do a little bit more than he normally does, in my opinion, when he does cameos and things. He actually even subdued himself a little bit, which he's usually almost entirely manic whenever I've seen him on screen. So, I mean, he didn't end that way, but he did start at least somewhat subdued in his character. and he went into it well. I thought really his character was my favorite in the film because it was entertaining, and he was in a pretty decent sized role for one of his typical roles.
He can be subdued and zany, softened at the same time. Like he had a very brief cameo in Orgasmo at the very end where he plays it completely straight. And then and he was actually in my film, The Big Blind, where he played two roles. He was an innocent victim where it was a little bit more of a, comedic relief bit. And then he also voiced the police chief, which that part he did completely straight. So I have seen both sides of him.
Yeah, and Oh, you go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, to add to that, he was also probably my favorite aspect of the movie, aside from the catchy theme song.
That was a weird theme song. It seems like it seems like Lloyd just kind of like shows up and like is himself. Because when I got to meet him last year, it was like, oh, he is just that guy. Like all the time, down to the bow tie. So, it seems like he doesn't have to do a whole lot of work necessarily for these cameos. It's just like he's such a out there personality that he can just like do it.
Well, for my movie, I deliberately wanted him to just be himself because I was just like, he alone, just as himself, is gonna make the scene interesting. And then when he did the voiceover bit, I mean, the lines were already there, so he just did it, But it's nice when you have someone like him who is just such a presence, no matter what, that, you can just let him be in front of the camera, just do his thing, and that'll carry it.
So much energy. So much energy.
Yeah, somebody called him zany, and I think zany is the perfect word.
I can only hope that I would have that level of energy. I don't have that level of energy now, so I can't really speak to it.
And I have to say, working with Lloyd at conventions, like he does great for the amount of time that he's on his feet and all the different people that he's interacting with, and every person that comes up to meet him, we get their name. He says their name to them. Like he's very involved and like makes every single person who comes up to meet him feel special. And the guy, I mean, that's a lot of emotional labor for a few days of a convention, and at his age he does it beautifully.
Yeah, he's just so cool. Like I can't wait to meet him again in like a couple of weeks.
Those songs, though, by the way, to me, out of all the stuff in the film, those songs to me would have been perfect in any of the main tier Trauma productions. I
thought the same thing. I thought that the songs were Trauma worthy. Definitely.
Very much.
I think so too.
Does anybody have any other favorites they want to talk about, or additional items of note about the movie? Any trivia, any little bits?
Oh my god! So I got to talk about those turtle jokes because, like, holy shit, I love that so much. So like our main character, her boyfriend is like a total dick, and she's like, "Do you remember what day it is?" And I was like, "I bet it's their anniversary, right?" And I think that was actually it. But he's like, "I'm not good with dates, I just don't remember." And he's like, "When did you get your turtle?" "Oh, it was April 7th, 3 years ago." And then they just like cut. He was like, "Yeah, he was outside a bar and I found him like drinking beer out of a puddle." And they just cut away to the cutest like baby turtle like in a tank. Like in a tank that's a terrible setup for it, by the way. They just cut to this tiny turtle in the tank, and it's like it pokes its head out and like goes back into its shell, almost like out of shame. It's like, oh, I feel bad now. And it was a really cute moment. And then, so this also ties into the first discovery of the killer rack, because she falls asleep and he puts his hand like down her chest like a grape, and it bites his hand off. And then when the cops show up, later it's like, something must have bit his hand. Usually in cases like this, it's an animal that's responsible, and there's only one animal here, and they pan over to like the little baby turtle like on the ground, and one cop has a broom and he's like trying to like corral it, and the other cop has his gun pulled on the fucking turtle, and it's just my god, like, and they keep like it's like, okay, no, just grab it, like recoiling from it.
Turtle wouldn't do that. It's a red-eared spider.
It's a red-eared spider. It's like the cutest, like, not dangerous animal.
They are incredibly dangerous in the wild because they outcompete others, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, it's an invasive species thing, not a cute baby thing, so.
Yeah, but I did love that too with the, I guess, animal control or whatever, like, ah!
No, they were actual cops. Those were the cops trying to handle this freaking turtle. That was a real news story that happened a while ago. Like a cop was like trying to like relocate this turtle or whatever. Like it was a big snapping turtle, and like it was in like a box, and he was so scared of it, like he couldn't even go over and like pick up the box. Like it started moving, and he was like, and he like puts his hand on his gun, and it's just like I heard this phrase on another podcast, "Blue Lives Magic," and I have no idea what the hell that means, but it felt like appropriate.
Oh boy.
I just love I love that moment where the biker guy because it seems like to me all the one-liners like started to come up more towards like 3/4 of the film through. At least more of the good ones. And one of the guys, he was like, "Take him! I'm too pretty to die." And he started his ass off in the other direction. That was one of my favorites.
Actually, the end when they defeated the monster with the bra. What's weird is that gave me flashbacks to the film Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask.
That's a good one.
Where they had the giant boob monster, and of course they used the bra to defeat the monster. And I always remember the line at the end. It's like, it's not over. What? They always travel in pairs.
Womp womp.
That's a good movie. It's a very, I think it was 1972. It's a very early 70s film. It's something that you could never make nowadays, and certainly not in that same way. And it does sort of have an extra little weirdness to it just because it's Woody Allen and all the reframing of his whole filmography in the wake of Me Too and all that stuff. And I'm very sad because I was such a big Woody Allen fan and all that stuff. But yeah, it as far as handling absurdism in a way that does kind of tickle perhaps a slightly more intellectual part of your brain, that's a good one to check out.
Just seeing the giant, I mean, that little vignette there, that little thing, just the giant boob monster where you just had a giant boob wandering around destroying things. I don't know what it is. This movie kind of reminded me of that a lot of the time. And then, of course, the way they defeated it, I thought to myself of that entire scene where they brought out the giant brazier to take it down.
And this also, I thought, kind of played into the whole thing. I also wonder about whether this was necessarily specifically for a guy's kind of movie. Like, because they, again, when I said it made a point, I was like, the point was it's all about boobs for guys. And it's like, that's not necessarily a message, in a movie all about guys. But the way they defeated it, where they came back to the complaints about underwire and all that kind of stuff. And what's that thing she says, like, underwire bitch or whatever? I'm like, that seems like that's feeding back into that whole part of the movie. And I'm like, the point that I felt it was making, like, again, the kind of the earnestness that peeked through every now and then. I kind of like that. That was fun. I think a movie.
I didn't get a chauvinistic vibe from the movie entirely. I felt like it was more of a parody of chauvinism.
Yeah,
lot of
well,
ways.
and
It really was in a lot of ways, yeah.
well, it reaches the ultimate point of the thing. Is a point that I've always, agreed with, which is that if one is to make any kind of physical adjustments of any kind, and I've always been in favor of plastic surgery, if for no other reason that it's their body, they can do what they want with it. But
Speaking of
you
may I interrupt here for just a moment? Speaking of a comedy, that if you want to see a good comedy film about breast surgery, I believe there's a movie that has David Schwimmer in it called Breast Men, which is a bad take on the how the first breast surgeons got the their in on making it a goal to help people get their the perfect breasts that they want.
You seem to know an awful lot about this stuff, Dave.
Well, plastic surgery is quite a fascinating field, I have to say. But the thing that I was going to say was that I've always been in favor of the idea of plastic surgery, because if for no other reason that it's someone's body, they can modify it or change it or do whatever they want with it. Especially if it would improve their self-esteem and that sort of stuff. And I know that there are plenty of people who are addicted to it and all that stuff. That's a whole other thing. But the point is that what I liked about this film is that it was able to, amidst the absurdity of everything, is that the ultimate message is that any changes that one is going to make should come from a place of strength and self love and wanting to do it because you wanted to, as opposed to what someone is expecting of you. And of course, once the ulterior, and that's what she comes to even before we find out that the killer rack is in fact a killer rack. And so then after that, she's able to find self-worth in herself as she is, which is nice. It's just, both of those things are important because, you should find self-worth in yourself as you are. But, at the same time, if you are going to make any changes to yourself, do it because you want to and because they would make you happy rather than because it's what's expected of you or desired by someone else.
Such a wholesome message in this Killer Rack movie, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think it is important.
Yeah,
It is.
It is important because, and again, I think that applies to anybody, men, women, whatever.
Sure.
And I, even on a small level for myself, I have always wanted to get my, I have a slight deviated septum, with my nose, and I wouldn't mind getting that fixed someday. It's not horrible, but, I wouldn't mind getting that touched up. So again, small example.
A little rhinoplasty on the weekend.
Just a bit, but nothing too, not gonna do a full Michael Jackson.
Right. Does anybody have anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, definitely. I had a couple comments too on the. I quite like the absurdity of the dialogue. I know some of it was groan-inducing, some of it seemed a little like, I could have tightened it up a little bit, but some of it, and I know Brandon will probably understand where I'm coming with this. There were lines like "blood, it stains," coming from one of the cops, and then there was the part where like the boss is like, "Let me let you in on a secret, Betty. Business is business." And I was thinking to myself, and water is where you find it.
Exactly, that's the point. Yeah, right from Robinson Crusoe on Mars.
Yes. And and I liked Betty. I liked Jessica Smollett. I liked the way she played her. I kind of liked Tim. I thought Paul McGinnis did. Their little thing was a little out of step with the absurd nature of most of the film, but it gave something grounded to root for, I thought. But other than that, I loved little touches, like the thing with the turtle and pretty much everything with Lloyd Kaufman. Those were fun moments too. Definitely.
Well, one day we have to do Robinson Crusoe on Mars. It still baffles me how that one got a Criterion release. But yes, indeed, water is indeed where you find it. As advice from that movie.
All right. Well, I think we did Killer Rack quite a bit of justice this evening. Don't you guys agree?
Strangely, yeah.
We had a lot to say on it. So, good job. So I guess we'll just go around and wrap it up, and everybody can say their spiel. We'll go ahead and start with you, Dane.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
All right, Dane, take it away.
I am Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker out of Charlotte, North Carolina. This last weekend, I filmed almost all of my segment for an upcoming anthology called Faces of Fear. Gonna be wrapping it up this next weekend, it looks like. And then got another one lined up after it. I've already done 4, including For We Are Many, Clownsploitation, Drive-In Grindhouse, Creepypasta the movie, and that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. But a whole lot of crazy things coming my way with increasingly large distribution.
Awesome. Good. We look forward to that. And Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. I am Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World, which is a YouTube channel dedicated to the physical media, typically be it CDs, video games, but mostly, of course, Blu-rays and DVDs. We do typical weekly pickup and, of course, what's coming out type videos so that you can keep abreast of what titles are going to be available. Of course, at the end of the week, we are going to be reviewing and ending our Academy Awards spectacular with a top 15 list of nominees that possibly could have or even should have won some of the awards they were nominated for. It is going to be an interesting top 15 list, and it should be worth looking forward to.
Awesome. Dustin, tell us about you.
Well, I'm a horror collector here in Milwaukee, and what don't I do? So I have a YouTube channel where I try to show off the stuff I find around town at the Crypt of Horrors. I'm also hanging out on Twitter an awful lot, also under the Crypt of Horrors. I have an Instagram for the collection that I almost never update, DHR Hunter. And I think that's more or less it. I'm just on here causing mayhem whenever I can. So, oh yeah, and I'm also on Pop Culture Weekly, also here on YouTube. That's related to the Twisted Dreams Festival, so I kind of have my hands in a lot of stuff. Perhaps too much stuff.
Never enough. All right, Jake, tell us about you.
All right, I'm Codebookie Jake here in Central Virginia. I'm a big-time fan and collector of all sorts of media, movies, music, books, and manga, and all that fun stuff. And budding contributor to the actual creation part of it, I hope. And I often guest on Septum Sin versus the World, and as Septum mentioned, we got a big video coming up. I do want to add a further thought that it's not just focused on the nominations they got, but also those they should have gotten. For example, we cover a film, just minor spoiler. One of the films on the list is one that we covered on this channel about a month ago. The Princess Bride definitely had to make that list. And partly because the writing was far sight better than tonight's film. No lines like "Was beauty killed the bust," but you know.
Oh my God! How could I forget about that? That was kind of bullshit. Like,
But, you know,
no surprise, this film did not make that list.
we should have. We probably should have rethought our order for this month. But anyway, and I also have my own channel, Codebookie Jake, which is more dedicated to videos about nature and the natural world. Hope I will have my own turtle commentaries sometime this year, but haven't found any yet. And that will do for now, I suppose. Go ahead.
All right, great. How about you, Dave?
Oh, my name is David Strege. I am the regular horror host here, but as we well know, as we are continuing our Inside Movies Galore journey, everyone has gotten more involved in making this podcast better. And next week we have a great film to discuss. What would that film be, Katie?
I believe next week we are doing the Monster Squad.
Nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, we join us next Tuesday around 9 p.m. To see what we say about that classic film. Also, check out some of the reviews that I do on this. On this channel that I'll be switching over to another channel. We're kind of in the middle of making things better all around. So definitely check out some of those and just enjoy watching the films, you know. So thank you, everyone. Everyone say good.
Well, I will wrap it up by letting everyone know that I'm Katie Cadaver and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a body positive horror artist and alternative model. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. I'm also the makeup artist for the horror punk band Rat Bat Spider and a dead girl for Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics. And I'm going to be getting together with both of them this weekend to tape an episode of Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics with Rat Bat Spider. So stay tuned for that when it comes out on the air. I'll have more details. I am also a Tromette with Troma Entertainment, and my next appearance with Troma will be at Horror Hound Cincinnati, and that's March 15th through the 17th. So come by and see me at the Troma booth and say hi. I also perform and produce for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque Productions. And our next big thing that we have coming up is the Art and Oddities Fair on June 1st at the Walker's Point Music Hall. So like us on Facebook to find out more information on that. And as always, please remember to like the Inside Movies Galore page on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share us with your friends. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.